watching Q News. Welcome to our special coverage of the unfolding situation in Syria. Syrian state television has announced the fall of President Bashar al-Assad's regime. Stay with us as we explore the events shaping Syria's future and the international response to this pivotal moment. Syrian state television has announced the fall of President Bashar al-Assad's regime, declaring what it called a victory of the Syrian revolution. This morning, the channel also broadcast a statement read by 9 individuals titled Statement Number 1. The statement confirmed the complete takeover of the Syrian capital Damascus and the release of all detainees. It also called for the preservation of all Syrian state assets during this transitional phase. Syrian Prime Minister Mohammad Ghazi al-Jalali has stated that his government is ready to cooperate with any leadership chosen by the Syrian people. He confirmed his readiness to facilitate a smooth transition of authority while urging the preservation of state institutions. Al-Jalali reiterated that Syria belongs to all its citizens and pledged to transfer all government files to the new leadership selected by the people. The Egyptian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has released a statement saying that Egypt is closely monitoring the situation in Syria and reaffirming its support for Syria's sovereignty and territorial integrity. The statement calls on all Syrian factions to prioritize national interests, unify their goals, and initiate a comprehensive political process to achieve peace and restore Syria's regional standing. The ministry also emphasized Egypt's continued efforts in collaboration with regional and international partners to alleviate Syria's suffering, support reconstruction, and ensure the safe return of refugees, ultimately aiming for the stability of the Syrian people deserve. Jordan's king has emphasized the importance of safeguarding Syria's security, its people, and their achievements, urging swift action to ensure stability and prevent chaos. He praised the armed forces and security agencies for their dedication to protecting Jordan's security and borders over the years. This came as he chaired a National Security Council meeting where he reaffirmed Jordan's support for the Syrian people and respecting their will and choices. The Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has confirmed that Bashar al-Assad has decided to step down and leave the country following negotiations with the opposition, with instructions to transfer power peacefully. Moscow added that it did not participate in the negotiations and called on all sectors of Syrian society to reject violence and resolve disputes through peaceful political means. For further analysis on the current situation in Syria, we're joined from Cairo by the head of the Arab and Regional Studies Unit at Al-Ahram Center for Political and Strategic Studies, Dr. Mohammed Al-Arab. Thank you, sir, for joining us here on Q News. Firstly, let's start off by asking, how did the language used by the Syrian Prime Minister's speech reflect the country's political situation right now?
رئيس الوزراء السوري.
أيوة.
ألو. رئيس الوزراء السوري.
Prime Minister is calling to the internal consensus in the upcoming period with the internal power in Syria, in particular the armed factions that invaded easily the strategic cities such as Idlib, Hama, and Homs, in reaching Damascus, aiming to minimize or stopping the bloodshed that Syria witnessed following a decade and a half after the international mobilization. A part of it is linked not to be overwhelmed with the phase after al-Assad regime and to be busy with rebuilding the new Syria. The second consideration is to overcome the bitterness witnessed in the past era and prioritize the Syrian interest above all considerations.
So, sir, what messages did the Syrian Prime Minister aim to convey? You talked about the internal aspect, but what about the messages conveyed to the international audience in his speech? What was he trying to do?
الرسالة التي يريد رئيس
The message aims the Syrian Prime Minister to convey to the international community that he is not belonging to the old regime power, but to the Syrian institutions that require its representation: the army, the police forces, diplomatic institutions, foreign minister services, facilities linked to education, health, and economy. The message, the following message that he wants to convey that the state forces that was in place during the al-Assad regime try to provide their services along with the new regime in serving the Syrian citizens from the first priority. And the third message is to convey an assured message that might be in stability in case that keep everyone to the interests of the National Syrian Authority, not to the interests of each and specific factions.
So, sir, if you could talk also about the Syrian state television. They declared the fall of Bashar al-Assad and his regime. What are the implications of this declaration when it comes from the state TV?
There are challenges that face the upcoming phase in Syria, which is a discrepancy between the most influenced factions. Most of them are religious and some of them are secular, so that's why it is difficult to easily achieve a consensus agreement. And the second challenge that is linked to the dissemination of the arms in the hands of Syrian families and individuals. Therefore, it is a must for the upcoming regime that the arms should be in the hands of the state hands and the law enforcement hands, and this is hard to be in a short term. As the situation is not only generated today but for decades, and another consideration that there are regional and international parts that have different and contradictory interests. So therefore, in reaching a consensus is not as easy as some would imagine.
Sir, we talked about the messaging that the Prime Minister tried to convey to the international community, but in your opinion, how might the international community respond to the potential fall of the Syrian regime?
The international community will respond based on several variables. The first one, to have a consensus between the old regime representative and the new representative. To what extent the factions linked to Ahmed Shara or al-Julani compared to the old regime, on top of which the Prime Minister, following al-Julani's statement, as he is running the cabinet until electing a new government and writing a new constitution. And another consideration as to have an stability peacefully without to be in fear of the armed in violence. If the guns were silent, it is an assurance indications for the international community and the relevant international and regional power of to reach in a consensus and to execute the clear disagreement, among which the United States, Russia, Iran, Turkey, and Israel, in addition, in a main Arab countries, on top of which Egypt, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Jordan.
So, sir, what challenges would Syria face when it comes to rebuilding the state institutions after the collapse of the regime?
There are several considerations would hinder the issue of reconstruction in Syria. Firstly, is linked to the situation that might be taken by some countries of not to participating in reconstruction for their own reasons. For instance, in case the new regime uses some manners that would make this power stop doing the reconstruction. And as a part of that, some countries that are collapsed, such as Libya, Yemen, Syria, Sudan, and Gaza and Lebanon, that make the project of reconstructions are distributed through several different entities with this context. And the third consideration, there's a gross cost financially and with respect to individuals that would require a long stage. As the destruction affected Syria, its age is more than 1 decade and a half, and that would cost a lot and a great human power. And another consideration, if Russia insisted to have an influence in the countries, some European country might be reluctant to participate in the reconstruction process.
Okay, well, can we discuss the humanitarian situation? How has the humanitarian crisis in Syria worsened due to the political and security challenges that are faced?
It is not clear up till this moment the impact of the humanitarian situations upon the Syrian landscape. It is early to estimate the casualties affected in Syria, and situation might go towards what's happening in Syria on some areas that require humanitarian aid, some areas that would require international support in facing possible extremism and terrorism, and taking into consideration that the situation in Syria isn't that worse than other areas such as Gaza, Lebanon, and Sudan. And therefore, it is too early to talk about this, the humanitarian situation up till now.
Okay, sir, thank you so much for joining us. That was the head of the Arab and Regional Studies Unit at Al-Ahram Center for Political and Strategic Studies, Dr. Mohammed al-Arab. Thank you so much for your insights and thank you for joining us. Media reports have confirmed that Israeli airstrikes targeted 2 sites near the Syrian capital Damascus, including the Mizea airport. And the reports further stated the 2 large explosions occurred in an area of Damascus, prompting a state of alert in the city. This comes as Israeli media confirm that Israel is carrying out a series of air raids on Syrian territory. White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan has stated that President Joe Biden and his team are closely monitoring the extraordinary situation in Syria. Sullivan has noted ongoing communication with regional partners to stay informed about the latest developments. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan has stressed the importance of preserving Syria's territorial integrity, emphasizing that the Syrian people alone should determine their country's future. Speaking on the sidelines of the Doha Forum, Fidan urged all parties in Syria to act responsibly. He also highlighted Turkey's collaboration with international partners to support a transitional phase in Syria, which he described as entering a new chapter. The Chinese Foreign Ministry has expressed hope for Syria's swift return to stability. In a statement, the ministry urged all parties to take effective measures to ensure the safety of Syrian citizens. It also reaffirmed China's commitment to providing full support to its nationals in Syria during this time of unrest. The Iraqi news agency has reported that the Iraqi embassy in Damascus has been evacuated. The Iraqi Border Guard Command stated that the border with Syria is secure and does not require additional forces. They added that they will protect Iraq's borders with honor and professionalism. French President Emmanuel Macron has said that his country will remain committed to the security of everyone in the Middle East. In a post on X, Macron stated that he praises the Syrian people for their courage and patience. In this moment of uncertainty, he wished them peace, freedom, and unity. Macron also reaffirmed France's commitment to the security of everyone in the Middle East. Syrian state television has confirmed the fall of President Bashar al-Assad's regime, marking a historic turning point as opposition forces seize control of Damascus and key cities.
Syrian state television has announced the fall of President Bashar al-Assad's regime, marking a pivotal moment in the nation's political and military history. The development has sparked celebrations in opposition-held territories, while former government face uncertainty and fear about the future. Prime Minister Mohammed Ghazi al-Jalali, addressing the nation before Damascus's collapse, emphasized the government's commitment to preserving Syria's sovereignty and appealed for increased support from allies. However, following the swift advance of opposition forces into the capital, al-Jalali adopted a conciliatory tone, pledging to transfer all government responsibilities to any leadership chosen by the Syrian people and expressing his readiness to cooperate with the new authorities. This dramatic shift follows weeks of intensified offensives by opposition forces. The capture of Damascus comes alongside significant territorial gains in Hama, Aleppo, and Homs. In Homs, government defenses collapsed under coordinated assaults, resulting in the city's capture. This loss severed critical supply lines, further isolating remaining government-controlled areas. The regime's fall signals a profound change in Syria's power dynamics, raising urgent questions about the nation's future. While opposition factions consolidate their control, the humanitarian crisis continues to worsen. Displacement is surging, and international organizations have voiced alarm over the escalating toll on civilians. Neighboring countries are on high alert, preparing for potential spillover effects that could destabilize the region further. As the situation evolves, calls for dialogue and negotiated peace grow louder to prevent prolonged chaos and alleviate suffering. The international community remains watchful, grappling with fears of enduring instability and its wide-reaching consequences.
For further analysis on the current situation in Syria, we're joined from Cairo by the world politics analyst for the United Media Services, Dr. Osama Raslan. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Sir, let's start off asking, what are the key messages, in your opinion, that the Syrian Prime Minister gave in his speech today?
Several of them are there, actually. first, he had a cooperative or a conciliatory tone or message, as he said that the government, his government, falling government, stands ready to cooperate with any leadership the people chooses. That cooperative stance was coupled also with an assuring message that the Prime Minister, is ready to cooperate with any leadership the people chooses, and offering all possible support to ensure a smooth and systematic transition of government functions and to preserve state and public facilities and utilities. The man also appeared a little unstable, even taken aback a little bit. He almost flinched at a certain point of his recording because of some outside noise that was clearly heard in the recording. That recording also, in his recording, he appealed to all Syrians not to harm public institutions and facilities because they, as he said, belong to the Syrian people, not to Syrian individuals. A personal message wasn't mistaken also in his recording. It was of a patriotic nature when he declared that he, despite it is a falling government, that he did not leave Syria, nor did he intend to. The man, to wrap this up, the man knows the dire situation he and his fallen government are in, and had no choice or option other than being so realistic, if not conceding.
So you talked a bit about the idea of the tone and body language and all of that, but in your opinion, you saw this and you saw these little hints of body language. What was the significance of the tone when it came to the Syrian Prime Minister's speech? What does this indicate for for what may happen?
The man grew overly realistic, as I said. He knew that he's out of options. He had to concede to, I would say, the defeat of the incumbent government in Syria. He knows that Damascus is under control of the rebels. He had to concede. He had no other choice. And, of course, Ahmed al-Shara, also known as al-Gulani, he said that the incumbent prime minister should continue to be in his position until further notice, until some transition procedures are adopted.
Okay, how might the announcement of Bashar al-Assad's regime collapsing impact the Syrian opposition groups?
Well, Syria is a diverse society without any interventions. Even before the civil war that lasted for more than 12 years now, Syria is a diverse society. This even grew unexpectedly and unimaginably stronger when it comes to such a diversity because of international interventions there. You had more than 60 flags being flown in Syria over the last 12 years. So now turn into opposition factions or opposition groups. They will gain more land. What I expect is that each such faction or group is going to try to control as much land as possible. Why? To have a better position when it comes to negotiating the future of Syria.
Well, hopefully things will settle down soon, but unfortunately we're out of time. That was the world politics analyst for the United Media Services, Dr. Usaima Raslan. Thank you so much for your insights and thank you so much for joining us. This brings us to the end of our special coverage for now. Remember to stay updated by following Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram and TikTok at Qnews EGY for the latest developments.